Welcome back to the show. Today it turns out that quite a lot of people are angry, and the reason why is City Skylines 2. Now this has been one of the most interesting stories of the last 6 months because it seems like it was a profound mess up that absolutely did not need to happen, right? This is a game that clearly wasn't ready. It does not seem that there was any real reason other than maybe some temporary stock issues or something like that led to this game being released before it was ready. I was doing my usual round of looking at the various news websites. I saw another one of PC Gamer's remarkably compelling headlines. It got me, decided to dive in, fell in a little bit too deep, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. And of course, this is a follow-up story, and follow-up is absolutely vital because if you tell someone that their shit is broken, I think you've got a responsibility to give them a chance to try to fix it. And if they're doing that work, it's worth reporting on. And on that, I've got a really simple request. Actually, this is a completely zero-cost way to support what we do. Could you, and this is my ask, consider clicking the subscribe button for the channel and the like button for the video? The reason why I say that is because whenever you do that, right, the YouTube algorithm basically gets a signal. You know how those algorithms work. It's all about the data. And whenever you do that, it costs you but a few seconds, and it actually does meaningfully help us. The more that happens, the more the algorithm will show our content to more people. That is really good for a number of reasons. It obviously helps with bringing in earnings, our wages, you know, all of that stuff. But also it means that as time goes on, we're able to make the show better for you guys. So that's a pretty simple ask, really. I'd appreciate it. And with that said, let's jump into this story. So where we last left off was a fairly interesting situation in this video. Of course, as is pointed out in the headline, the active player base was going down. The recent reviews were mostly negative, and there was a statement from their CEO. And that statement was, the biggest regret we have is that modding is not yet available in the game. It was a fairly rough situation. I mean, the game had massive performance issues, and it was fascinating looking at the content creation scene for it, because for them, a lack of modding meant a lack of assets. Now, some modding was happening. Thunderstore is a thing. It's like the non-official, basically modding kind of like web store thingy for City Skylines 2, but the thing that really would matter is the official mod support, the official mod tools. That meant a lot of systems, a lot of fixes, a lot of depth just wouldn't be there. It also meant less assets. And less assets for this crowd means less diverse builds, fewer things that they can create with the tools in the sandbox. The performance was bad. Obviously, it was bad for everybody. And we do have an update on that performance as well. But obviously for the creators, it was then interesting to see that, well, a lot of their viewers were not really playing City Skylines 2 that much. They were struggling with views. The City Skylines 2 content creation game is kind of weak. Some people were moving back to City Skylines 1. Generally speaking, you just had a community that profoundly felt like they were let down. In our reporting of this, I've essentially came to the conclusion, obviously, if the facts change, that will be updated. From what I understand, a lot of this lays at their publisher, Paradox. At the time, right, Lamplighters League had, basically completely failed. They lost a shitload of money on that, and it really seems like this game was kind of rushed out to fill that gap. I mean, when you look at their finances, and then when you see that with some other games, they're actually delaying them so they can be good quality. I imagine a lot of the City Skylines fans are also thinking, man, shame you didn't delay our game so that Colossal Order actually had the time to finish it. Because it's that sort of thing. It's always harder to fix your game when it's live and you're in the middle of an ongoing disaster on multiple fronts. But okay, some weeks have passed. We were going to give Colossal Order time to ship the modding, to fix the game. Now that stuff has happened. It brings us to today. And not everything is rosy. There is good, there is bad. We shall cover it fairly. Paradox Mods Beta is out. It is shipped, and from everything I can tell, it's not a disaster. Some big mods, like Move It, are in, so that's pretty nice. And basically, it's a mod manager. It does mod manager things. Do you think it's neat that basically load order problems are not a thing here? Which, I mean, man, I would have really liked that back in my Skyrim days. Of course, mod management, right? Updating your mods, doing all of that stuff. You can add mods to playsets. You can swap what playset you are using. Just a lot of those tools. And part of it here is this is beta. They will be refining things, etc., etc. And eventually this will actually launch on consoles. So that's a pretty damn big difference to whenever this was operating via the Steam Workshop. And look, Steam Workshop, you know, thumbs up in many ways, but it's not a bespoke solution, and it was great that all the mods were there in Steam Workshop, and it would be, it would be ideal if this also supported Steam Workshop, but Steam Workshop can be a little bit of a nightmare if you're going for a more like kitted out modding setup, and really when it gets to that stage, most people actually do like using not the Steam Workshop, instead going for some sort of mod manager. Anyway, to go into a bit further detail in this modding stuff, it actually kind of gets more interesting. So there's a blog post from Sergey, who is somebody who himself was a modder, worked on the intersection marking tool, node controller renewal, and a bunch of other mods. He was hired by Colossal Order. He's working on modding features, and they basically talked about some of the things that are happening here. One is modding toolchain. So in the City Skylines 2 menu, you can see here the state of the toolchain for like the Unity editor, Unity license, Unity mod project, .NET SDK, just all of the different things that you need. And basically the cool thing here is you can just download all of these in one place. If there are updates needed to any of those things, that's fine. You can just download them. And it basically makes life easier for mod makers, which is really cool. There's also a mod project template that, to cut a long story short, just sets a lot of stuff up for you by default, which is nice. They've got their mod post processor, which allows modders to more easily take advantage of some of the more advanced and newer engine improvements, some things that have been shipped in Unity, so that's pretty damn cool. And in terms of compatibility, well, you can create your own, basically, right, with your mod, you kind of create your own system for the game, you register it with the update loop of the game, and it seems that that is working in more of a modular plug-and-play kind of fashion. I've got experience with Unity. I do not have any experience with City Skylines 2 mods, though, but it seems that it is that instead of you just modifying scattered parts of the game code all around the place, which I suppose seems kind of neat. And also, mod creators can actually flag properties, which then for users will just appear. So here's an example in this screenshot. You can see mod setting sample, and float sliders, integer sliders, drop downs, toggles. So if you're a mod creator, you can actually just give your users, well, user-friendly options, which is really sick. Another thing they've added is the map editor, and this map editor is pretty damn cool. It doesn't feel babied down, and that's because this is basically the thing that they use to make maps themselves. That stuff does appear to be really good. It's great that this is happening. Now, another good thing here is performance, and one of the city planning people that I watch, City Planner Plays, has done some really stellar work in this. Basically, he has a test city, and he did a whole bunch of tests, right, before and after of this newer version. And I think the thing that really is, and this isn't his full data, absolutely check out his video on all of this if you want like somebody who really does have true skin in the game here. But basically you can see that average frame rates are rising, but I think most importantly your 1% lows are rising. Now, it's not across the board. There are some quirks over with AMD GPUs, so it's mostly NVIDIA GPUs. In fairness though, the market is also mostly NVIDIA GPUs. But yeah, your main gains are in 1% lows, and if you've played a game with a really nice average frame rate but bad 1% lows, you know how it's not just bad, but it's also deeply frustratingly bad, because the otherwise good average frame rate, it almost gives you this false sense of thinking, oh, the game runs fine, it's great. And then you see the 1% lows and oh man, yeah, it's just absolutely maddening. The quote from him is, if performance has sidelined you, you might want to give it a try again. So that's definitely a good thing. Check out his video for the full benchmarking and a lot of other things. The next bit though, and this is what led to the headlines, I think this is what's led to a little bit more drama, is beach properties. And it's a really strange one. So to immediately take a look at the Steam side of things here for beach properties, well, very negative reviews out of 480. Yeah, I mean, how about this? Forgot the C in DLC. Because this is basically just an asset pack, right? It's got a bunch of assets, okay? They are beachfront properties, but as we actually go into this, well, we can see, as pointed out here by Cyber Stand, where beach? Where beach indeed, because beach properties doesn't include a beach. Now, there are beaches in some of the maps that are pre-made in City Skylines 2, but what if you want to do some terrain editing within your map and maybe make a beach? Well, you can't, which kind of sucks. But it actually gets a bit worse than that. Okay, so let's break down what the problems are. Number one, what I call the tree problem. This asset pack adds 4 palm trees. These are the only palm trees in the game, and palm trees, of course, are fairly common. They're in places that are not beaches, right? So that means a palm tree is really something that you would want. But a palm tree being just locked in this DLC, that really sucks. And as an example, if you were to grab a map that a map maker made, I mean, number one, map maker maybe wants to use those palm trees, but if they did, and you don't have this asset pack, well, it will be replaced with this kind of like golden placeholder block asset thingy. So that kind of sucks. For a lot of people, the trees, essentially these like kind of landscaping options, that's like a big no-go. So that's really bad. There's also the problem with beaches, where these are beachfront properties, but there's no beaches in City Skylines 2. As I said, a map might have beaches, but you cannot add them from within the game whenever you're managing your city and doing some terrain editing. Then makes you think, well, will beaches be a non-asset pack DLC? Will they be, will they be in that? Will they be part of an expansion? Maybe some sort of tourism expansion? Will it be a free game update or something like that? Basically, point is, it doesn't feel good. It's one of those things where this maybe would be undramatically a pretty mid thing that's not a great deal, but otherwise people would be fine. But because this is a game that's been a bit of a shit show, people are not fine. The next thing then is general quality, where many of the buildings are perfectly fine, but the variety is not fantastic, and in many cases, they just don't really scream beachside property. Also, many lot sizes have a pretty low diversity, relying on color variation more than actual different layouts and stuff. Basically, that and a lack of content. The sort of content that people would expect when you're thinking about beachside buildings. Of course, this is taking properties as, things that people live in, because if you want docks, if you want seawalls, if you want promenade-specific assets, that's the first thing that came into my head. I come from a seaside town. No, there's no small props, there's no commercial, so no little seaside shop or surf shop, or no, none of that. And there's a clear reason why. Because this DLC is called Beach Properties Asset Pack, and that's exactly what it contains. But it's a part of an expansion pass that is called Expansion Pass Waterfronts. Now, it's a bit weird because on Steam, the RRP of this pack is $52.99. Now, it includes the San Francisco set, which appears to be bundled in the expansion pack and not be for separate purchases. It has reviews on Steam, but you can't literally just go and buy it. Anyway, it's got a muscle car garage building, 5 different muscle car models, and police vehicle to spruce up your game. It's got the Golden Gate Bridge and a San Francisco City map. So there's that. There's the Beach Properties Asset Pack that we've been talking about with an RRP of £8.49. There's the Creator Pack Urban Promenades and Creator Pack Modern Architecture, both costing £6.99 and each having 30 community creator-made assets. And then there's the big thing, which is the Bridges and Ports expansion in Q4 of this year for £16.99. It's got new tools to create and manage ports, bridge assets, lighthouses, marine industries, all that sort of thing, and this expansion pack is included in the Ultimate Edition. And that kind of means the purchase options here are to buy these things individually. To buy City Skylines, you can buy CS2 itself at £41.99, which is pretty pricey, but currently it's 10% off at £37.79, and actually, that they've got a pretty major beat here with mods, but they're only doing 10%, that actually does tell me something from my experience with publishers and just learning a little bit more about the logic of how you actually manage sales when you're doing these things in games. Then, of course, there's the Ultimate Edition costing £74.99, which has got the base game plus the expansion pass, which basically prices the expansion pass at £33. And then if you just buy the expansion pass in Steam, then that's £43.39. So honestly, that all just feels kind of messy. I also believe that this stuff was supposed to come out earlier. I think that these beach properties, they were basically supposed to be there pretty shortly after launch. But obviously, the thing that was obvious to everybody happened and the game was, a bit of a shit show. Now, you might be thinking then, why is this only a 10% discount? Surely this is a major event and they really want to try to activate their audience now that the mods are here. Well, they don't, because you don't activate your audience with a 10% discount. And this is because of how Steam works. You basically need to hit a certain threshold with what your discount is before it sends a notification to people who have got your game on their wish list. So whenever they're doing, basically their discounting strategy, right? It will be that whenever they do a large enough discount to actually trigger Steam to send that notification, that's like a really big gun. And they can only shoot that gun at that level of discount once. So, with their discounting strategy, doing it right now would be just a really bad idea because the mods aren't all there. Way more mods will be made. Way better mods will be made now that the tools are actually coming out. And that essentially means that this is only for people who bought the game and are not happy so that they can now reinstall it, maybe be a little bit more happy, have perhaps some better performance, start to enjoy some mods. But this is still very, very early stages. Essentially, when they fire the deep discount, that's when they truly are trying to actually get proper money from the game to actually start to shift those units. And I imagine they would do that as well when they have a little bit more DLC on offer so that they can actually get some DLC money from that. One of the biggest things about DLC is that it increases the average sale price of your game. So essentially, they are saving their big discounts for later. They stand to gain way more in the future than they do now. And that's actually made pretty damn clear when we look at the data. So let's take a look at the data that's available. Steam reviews for the overall game are rough. The thing is, all reviews are now mixed. So that stuff was going a little bit more up, but the recent ones are mostly negative. We can actually see on the review graph here a spike, and the spike of negative is quite a lot more than the spike of positive. It appears that that is driven not by the mod support, because it does seem that the mod support's fairly reasonable, right? It seems that the map creator is good. It seems the tools they've made for modders, that stuff's good. So to me, I think this DLC essentially just comes off as an insult. They're giving people the opportunity to buy another thing. They've delivered this piece of paid content. People's core issues with the game are not resolved. So because of that, yeah, there will be a continued expression of dissatisfaction. Then when we take a look at the Steam players on a 1 week view of SteamDB, we can see, right, you're floating around 5K, just a little bit over 5K. That's now risen to a bit over 7.5K. But that's not a lot for a game that's fairly large, and it's not a lot for this game because here is the 3-month graph. And you can see in this 3-month graph that this has only brought them back to where their player numbers were late February. Ouch. Yeah, so the core of this story is they are doing the work. It's going to be quite a lot of time before players actually kind of recognize them for doing the work and recognize them in the form of, you know, positive reviews and that sort of thing, because ultimately the game didn't come out right. There's parts of the simulation that are unintuitive, that don't seem to work. There are bugs with the simulation, and these can actually make the game feel unclear to play and not fun. And while fixes and tweaks are being made, the game is still not in the state it should have shipped at, because it shouldn't be shipping with mods beta. It should be shipping with mods, shipping with the mod tools, probably shipping with more assets, shipping with performance that is better than it is right now. They weren't able to do that, and we are now seeing just how much more painful the road to recovery is when you're basically recovering from a launch that was doomed to failure. It's so hard to understand why Paradox thought that this was the move. So hard to understand. It seems utterly self-defeating. They got some money back then, but how the hell does it justify this situation? What a shit show. I wish the developers the best, and to whoever made the decision, I mean, fuck you, because the developers and the players did not deserve any of this bullshit. That's it for today's video. Let me know what your experience is being with this game. I'll see you next time.